Okay, so it's something that seems so basic. It seems like all of us know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about something like a 401k. What's going on? This is Next Chapter Living Planning Your Retirement Story with financial advisor Steven Sabo of Executive Financial Group. And you can find him online at executivefinancialgroup.com. And my name is Jeff Miles. Steve, first of all, let's just jump right into this whole idea of what the 401k is. So like, the average person, we think we know what it is, right? It's that thing where I just kind of like, they take money out of my paycheck and put it into this savings account for me that one day I'm going to, have when I retire. Right. And the cool thing is, my employer, I think actually throws some in there too. And I just know that the biggest thing is that I don't have to pay taxes on that income right now. So let's dive into a little bit. And again, I'm guessing, Steven, you probably talk to many people when it comes to their 401k, regardless of where they are in their stage of life.
Yeah.
There's probably, many different scenarios on how to use it, how to save properly with it. Talk about sort of those basics from when you get started with your 401k and then how it goes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really great plan. It helps people save because one of the biggest things about saving is a lot of the times if you are doing it on your own, you actually have to physically move that money from one account to another. So this, gives you an opportunity where it comes right out of your paycheck before taxes are paid or anything like that. Yeah. And it goes into this account where they're deferred. And, you can kind of just start putting some money away each paycheck and going from there. And it's a good way to lower the income that you're paying on now, right? So if you made $50,000 and you contributed $5,000 during the year, it's really going to show up as $45,000 on your tax return. And then, like you said, it defers those taxes as long as that money's in there. And then when you finally retire and you start to draw it out of there, you pay the tax on it. But it's a really great plan that allows people. I shouldn't say really great. Some people, might disagree with me on that, but it's a good way for you to be able to put money away for your retirement and just start saving, on your own.
Do you feel like some of this has to do with your personality? You mentioned a second ago that the idea of, it's different than you taking money that you have and moving it from this account over to this account. And you got to be a pretty disciplined saver in that kind of situation, right? Yeah. You got to be the person that says, well, if I'm going to contribute this $500 that I've got in this account and move it over here, I have to actually make sure that I do that and I move that $500 over here. Whereas something like a 401k, your employer takes it out of your paycheck the same way that they take out all the other benefits, your health insurance and whatnot. And it is not taxed whenever it goes into that account, but it's kind of like, I don't see it, so I don't know it to miss it. And for the people who may not be wanting to think so much about moving that money or whatever, it's kind of done for you. And then, of course, there is the idea that, maybe your employer is going to contribute to that as well, based off of whatever they may have as far as a match is concerned. What about somebody who's like, I had this 401k at my last job, and I decided I am going to take a new job. One of the things that was really big when it came to pensions back in the day was that pensions were kind of set up on this premise that you were kind of going to be with that employer for a very long time, right?
Right.
And so they were kind of, it was almost kind of like the reward for loyalty, down the road. The world is different now. People don't necessarily work in the same job at the same company for 40 years like they used to. So your retirement plan, does it move with you? Do you have to start all over again? How does that work with a 401k?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. There's, a bunch of different options that you have normally whenever you leave and you have a 401k. Depending on your new employer and what type of plan they may offer, you might have the option to roll your old 401k into your new employer's plan. And you can do a tax-free transfer from that old plan to your new plan. So you start with some money in it. You also have an option to roll it into your own IRA, an individual retirement account outside of any work plan. You can set up your own IRA and roll that money into it, do a tax-free rollover into that as well.
Is there a limit to that, by the way, when it comes to the IRA, if you're rolling over 401k money into that IRA?
There's no limit whenever you're rolling it over in there. If you started one on your own, there's a limit on how much you could contribute.
Got it.
There
Okay.
are limits to how much you can contribute to a 401k in a year, but
Sure.
it's much higher than an IRA if you did one outside of a work plan. So
Okay.
on that rollover, there's no limits on how much you can roll over at one time. So if your 401k balance was $100,000 and you left your job, you
Yeah.
could roll all that money over into an IRA at that time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to retirement now, so I spent the last 20 years, 30 years, let's say, contributing to this 401k that I've got. And I've got a pretty healthy amount in there. Let's say I'm just going to use a random number, $250,000. And I'm ready to retire. I'm 65 years old. I'm ready to pretty much turn it on autopilot when it comes to life, right? That's the idea that I have when it comes to retirement. Like to me, I just want to live in autopilot world where I'm not worried. Like I don't ever want to see an alarm clock have to wake me up in the morning. And I don't want to have to worry about what time I've got to get to someplace tomorrow unless I've chosen to be there. But when it comes to your 401k, when it comes to your retirement plans and the different areas where people may have assets when it comes to their retirement, let's say I've got $250,000 in this 401k. Do I just get it all at once? Do I start getting it every month? I mean, I don't get a paycheck every month anymore. What's the best way for me to go about using that 401k money to my biggest benefit?
Sure. I mean, that's really dependent on each individual client and what their needs are. And whenever we work with people, we take a look at their budget and we say, okay, what are your bills like? What are the fixed bills that are coming in and going out? And like you said, you made a good point. You don't have a paycheck anymore. You are the paycheck. You have to create that. If you have some Social Security, maybe that makes up a portion of it, but maybe your bills go above and beyond your Social Security. So now you have to figure out, well, how do we draw money from this 401k in order to supplement whatever we need in order to live? And so, we'll take a look at their budget and their lifestyle, what kind of debt do you have? What are the different things from there? And then we build a plan and say, all right, we take this $250,000 and we're going to create a plan so that it generates X amount of dollars per month for you.
Sure.
To supplement, to be able to pay your bills and to live and enjoy yourself in retirement. Some people, they have a lot of clients that we work with. They there's not a lot to it. Their house is paid, their cars are paid, their living expenses are very low. So maybe between a husband and a wife, that both their Social Securities and a small pension cover all their bills. And they say, we're just going to take some money as we see that we need it. We're going to go on vacation and we want to take the grandkids. Can we take $5,000 out of our account?
Right.
How do we do that? And, there's something to consider with taxes whenever you do that. Whenever you're withdrawing that money, it's all taxable. So we want to take a look at your income and see where you are, and just to make sure that maybe your Social Security wouldn't get taxed if you were still working or anything like that. And there's a bunch of different factors that go into it, but those are the basics. What's your budget and what do we need to come up with? If Social Security and any pensions that you have or any other sort of additional income that you have isn't going to cover it, how do we draw that income and create that income from the accounts that you have, from the money that you saved in these different retirement accounts?
Have you ever had somebody come in and listen, I'm not saying this as if like, how do you not know this? I'm saying this because there was a time when I kind of felt like this is kind of how retirement worked, right? And it was, well, I know I'm going to get this Social Security check. That's a monthly benefit that I'll get. So I know that I'm going to get Social Security in the form of a check every month. But when it comes to my 401k, I mean, I can just get that whenever I want, or I can just take it all at once whenever I retire. And from that point on, it's my money and I just do with it whatever I want to. It's not necessarily that simple, because if you were to take that entire $250,000 out of your 401k at one point when you say, all right, cool, I'm not going to work Monday. Well, all of a sudden that could really throw a kink into your Social Security, especially for that year. It could throw a kink into what that money could be doing for you if you didn't just take it out and say, let's go have a ball, honey. We're going to spend all this because we're going to have this other Social Security money over here. I think that there actually does need to be a plan. And I have to think that people sometimes believe that there's this idea that you just, well, that's my money from wherever I want it.
You'd be surprised that even, we meet people all the time and they're good people. They're smart people in the industries that they're in. But a lot of the times there's just a lack of financial education,
Yeah.
and not everybody knows or understands the ramifications. Like you said, it's a lot more complicated than just, I'm going to take that money out, because like you said, if you drew all that money out, close to half of it's going immediately to taxes.
Yeah. So, all of a sudden, I thought I had 250 grand. I've got 125 coming to me. What happened?
Exactly. And so then, like you said, now you're missing out on growth on a larger amount of money. You're paying taxes. You might cause you to pay more taxes on other things, Social Security, Medicare, depending on how much it was. There's all kinds of different little nuances and things in there that you could trigger by drawing all that money. So we do hear it quite often. Sometimes people say, well, I'll just take this. What am I going to cash it in? And we say, well, no, we're going to do a tax-free transfer to whatever it is that we're going to use for your retirement. But you'd be surprised. There are a fair amount of people that just think, okay, well, I'll just cash it in, I guess. And I'll take that money and I'll stick it in the bank and we'll go from there. I'll just take it whenever I need it. And, you could really hurt yourself in retirement by doing something like that. So, it's always good to ask somebody or work with a professional and say, hey, what are my options here?
Right.
Because even sometimes the people at the work, and that are administering the plan themselves might tell you something that could be, a problem down the road for you. So
detrimental to the future, health of that exact plan. And this is part of it, is that I feel like people, we work so hard. And while we're working in our working years in the accumulation phase of life, I don't want to make it sound too simple, but it's not like there's a whole lot that we have to think about when it comes to, I go to work, I get a paycheck, and my employer actually figures out the deductions of what's coming out of my paycheck every month as far as taxes, insurance, the 401k, all these different things. Yep. But once you retire, all of a sudden now you're having to make the kinds of decisions that companies are making, or that they've been educated on how to do and provide when it comes to taking care of all these little things that, have to do with, the IRS and all the other things. And the way that this system is set up, when I say the system, I mean that there is no system when it comes to educating people necessarily. We're all left to our own devices. And, you're kind of put in this situation where it's like, okay, so I have to go out and I've got to now figure all this stuff out on my own. I mean, that's why people want to come see you, the financial advisor, so that you can say, well, no, here's really the best way to handle this. And it's also from a standpoint of kind of, letting people know that just because you're retired doesn't mean that you stop thinking about what to do with your money.
Right.
Because I know a lot of us, I've felt that way in the past of, well, once I'm retired, I don't have to think about the money part, because if I've saved properly and everything else, then I'll be fine and I don't have to worry about anything. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily about the worry. It's about planning. And if you don't know what you're doing, right, that plan could go haywire really quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you go from working, like you said before, you go from working 20, 30, 40 years and you're not really thinking, you're on autopilot, save, put it all away. And then all of a sudden it's a very drastic lifestyle change where, like you said, now the burden is on you. Yeah. You have to figure out all these things, and it can really be a problem. People tend to get emotional whenever it comes to money. And so especially, whenever it comes to the stock market. And if you see, okay, well, I'm just going to leave it how it was at my, former employer. And then all of a sudden, maybe the stock market takes a big dive and people, get emotional and they do reactionary things. And sometimes those knee-jerk reactions can really cause you a problem. And so, it's really important that you plan and that you work with somebody to sit there and kind of pull you back from that ledge and say, hey, look, we're going to work through the ups and downs. And whenever you have a good plan in place, you shouldn't be worrying about those things, because it's my job to worry about that. It's my job to sit there and say, hey, look, even though the stock market's down, this over here is providing you your income and you have nothing to worry about. So we're going to let this go. And I just want you to sit back and relax, take a deep breath, and we're going to work through this together, because people make mistakes when they start to panic, and when they're on their own and they don't know how to navigate that, people start to panic quickly, and it can be very detrimental for them.
I'm going to put a timestamp on this particular episode of the podcast. Today's August 20th. It's 2024. We've got this huge election that's coming our way. Yeah. You hear the words market volatility a lot right now. You hear the word recession a lot right now. You've heard inflation a lot over the past. There's a constant curiosity. What is the Fed going to do with interest rates? Things like this. Every single one of the things that I just mentioned actually affects your 401k. And you can't get to that point when you've retired and say, okay, I did all the work and now I can just sit back and the money's there. It's whatever. You got to pay attention to these things. Yeah. One of the things I know we've mentioned before is you could have $250,000 saved for retirement, in quotes, right? But that $250,000 may not spend the same depending on where you have that money and what it is you're trying to set up for yourself when it comes to the monthly budget that you need in order to live off of that money.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be realistic with what you have. And, you got to understand how far that money can go at. So if it's not earning anything and you're just sitting there with $250,000, eventually over 10 years, that $250,000 isn't going to spend the same as it did, 10 years prior. And, you need to make sure that there's a good balance between being able to grow it because of inflation, because of, the upkeep and pricing just going up over the years, but also being careful, like I said, to make sure that you're not making a knee-jerk reaction because you're panicked and losing part of it. So there's that balance between what's the right amount in something safe, something that's going to keep my gains, something that is going to protect me from stock market downturns, but also something that is going to be able to help me grow this money over time so that it's there throughout maybe 20, 30 years of retirement.
Right.
That you have enough to spend.
Listen, if you are interested right now knowing more about your specific 401k situation, because it's different for different people, right, Stephen? I mean, again, $250,000 isn't the same for everybody. Sure. Reach out to Stephen and the family there at Executive Financial Group. You can find them online at executivefinancialgroup.com. Of course, Stephen, a financial advisor that can really help you set that plan in place, put it all together. Even something as we all think, the 401k, I contribute tax-free, and then once I retire, I get the money. I may have to pay some taxes on it, but I get the money at the end. Right. It's not necessarily like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Well, listen, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. My name is Jeff Miles, and financial advisor Stephen Sabo. Again, reach out to him and everyone there at Executive Financial Group to find out more. This is Next Chapter Living, planning your retirement story. Thanks for listening. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast and you put the notifications on so that you know when new content is coming your way.
Thanks a lot, everybody, and thank you, Jeff.
The opinions expressed by Stephen Sabo and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this podcast station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Virtue Capital Management, LLC, VCM, a registered investment advisor. VCM and Executive Financial Group are independent of each other. Pennsylvania Insurance License number 670429. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Stephen Sabo and/or Executive Financial Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.